Hello, I'm Tim May, and this is
Bill Rabinowitz.
Bill. Ohio State once again wraps up a recruiting class. I think this is about the 450th I've covered. Actually, it's about 32 that I've covered, and I tell you what, just when you think you've seen it all, I mean, this is right up there with any that I've covered in terms of depth, the way they touched almost all of the bases with this class. I think they would like to have gotten one more stud defensive tackle with this group. They didn't get it, but they moved on from there. Flip side of that is they got in my opinion, a great junior college offensive tackle, which is rare for Ohio State to even go to the junior college ranks, and you know something about him. But from top to bottom, Dwayne Haskins, the quarterback, Nick Bosa at defensive end, Keandre Jones at one of the linebacker spots. They just loaded up with some all-stars in this group.
Yeah, and don't forget some of the local guys. Jonathan Cooper from Kahana, a stud defensive end who's already enrolled. They've got a bunch of guys. Antonio Williams, the running back. That's not a local guy, but
don't forget Demario McCall. He's one of the great running backs out there.
And one of the few, I don't want to say surprised, he wasn't a surprise, but Malik Harrison was one of the late ones yesterday. And the junior college player that you alluded to is Malcolm Pridgeon from New York, who 6'8", 328. He really could be an impact player, and they need that because they obviously only have two starters returning on the offensive line.
Yeah, and I think that showed the muscle sometimes that Ohio State can flex when it really wants to go after a guy, because basically Malcolm Pridgeon came down to Ohio State or Baylor. He wants to stay a little bit closer to home because his mom is having some health problems, and this guy is 6'8", like you said, 325, 330. I think depends on what time of the day he steps on the scale. But he's a guy who comes in and immediately gives him, if nothing else, as Greg Studrawa, their new offensive line coach, said, if nothing else, he gives them competition and depth at offensive line. And when you're replacing 3 of the 5 starters on the offensive line, that's huge. They also got some other good players in this offensive line, not the least of which is Michael Jordan in the Rivals.com Top 100 kid from Canton, Michigan, Plymouth High School, who Michigan and Michigan State both wanted. They went up there and hung on to him throughout the stretch run in the recruiting, and he enrolled early. And they're expecting some of these young guys to play. As Urban Meyer said, of the 25 guys in this class, he would like to see at least 18 of them find playing time. As we well know, of the 25 they signed a year ago, only 4 of them saw playing time this year. And you're going to have 45, 46, 45 guys who have never played a down at Ohio State are going to be vying for some positions in the fall.
The majority of the roster is a freshman in terms of athletic eligibility. That's just an amazing statistic.
Shameless story plug. I wrote a story about that 2 weeks ago in the Dispatch. You can read it at dispatch.com.
And another shameless plug, the Malcolm Pridgeon thing I wrote about in today's paper. And it's an impressive story of what he's overcome. His father died when he was 11 of a heart attack. His mother had a heart attack and stroke when he was, I think, 16. His sister became the custodial guardian of him, and had to go to junior college and has risen above it. So it's a great story. You hope that a guy like that pans out. It's not going to be easy for him to get a starting job. Jamarco Jones is really impressed. He was one of those guys who didn't play really, but behind the scenes, they really liked a lot.
Yeah. They need 2 tackles, though. Isaiah Prince, of course, played some last year as a freshman. That's a guy that they're going to be leaning on. But, yeah, I think the competition at the offensive line spot in the spring is going to be as intense as any we've seen around here in a while, just from the so-called quality guys they've got are going to be going for some positions. And with that said, I mean, they got a big-time quarterback in Dwayne Haskins, a guy that they really wanted to begin with, who ended up committing to Maryland. Then Ohio State got their quarterback, as we know, Tristan Wallace, who all of a sudden near the end of this past season decided he didn't want to play quarterback anymore in college, which was pretty tough. And I think he ended up going to Oregon, if I'm not mistaken. But Dwayne Haskins, Maryland has a coaching change. Greg Studraw will tell you that. He was part of the old staff. Now he's at Ohio State. Dwayne Haskins had committed to the old staff. Now he's part of Ohio State. It's funny how the wheels keep turning in college football and recruiting.
Yeah, and Urban Meyer gushed about Dwayne Haskins yesterday, said that his release and his mechanics are as good as any incoming freshman he's ever seen. That's a huge get. The other one that he gushed about was a cornerback, Jordan Fuller, who was a late guy, one of the guys that they really needed at the end, especially when they lost Eli Apple and they lost the safeties. I mean, I think he's probably more of a cornerback. Yeah. But, those guys are somewhat interchangeable, to some degree. But they really like Jordan Fuller.
Yeah, it's funny in this day and age, which is beautiful. Just Google some of these guys and watch the videos. I mean, some of these guys are incredibly impressive, not the least of which is Rajay Burns, a guy that they got late in the process, a flip from the University of Louisville, or is it Louisville University? University of Louisville. And he's just an all kind of do everything guy, but he's figuring in the mix, I think, immediately in defensive backfield. They loaded up on defensive backs in this class. And one last thing, we touched on him a minute ago, but it's really interesting because you remember when Joey Bosa first showed up here, and I remember Mike Vrabel taking his name in vain a few times, in those early practices. But a lot of people think Nick Bosa, who still the headliner of this class. I mean, the highest ranked player in this incoming class. They're expecting things from him early. If you watch video of him before, of course, he suffered his knee injury last season. He looks like he could do the part. And of course, Chris Carter, who's helped coach down at Aquinas High School down in Fort Lauderdale for a little bit, thinks he's better than Joey Bosa was at this point in his career. That's a lot of pressure to put on a young man, isn't it?
Well, Joey Bosa said the same thing, that
Right.
that Nick is better than he was at the same
But
age.
see, Joey Bosa wasn't following Jimmy Bosa. He was just Joey Bosa. Now he's not only got the pressure, but he's got the prototype.
If he didn't want the pressure, he wouldn't have come to Ohio State. So he knows, Nick Bosa knows coming to Ohio State, what his brother did, the spotlight's going to be on him. But he might be slowed by the knee injury, but he also can break in a little bit because they do have Tyquan Lewis, they do have Sam Hubbard. They're not going to count on him to start from day one, but he's the headline. Like you said, he's the crown jewel, the five-star guy in this class.
Yeah. And two other quick things. One of the things I like just watching video of these guys, and Greg Studrawa, we got to talk to him yesterday. He touched on this, but several of these offensive linemen they recruited, Gavin Cupp, Jack Wollabaugh, Tyler Gerald, they've got an edge about them. I mean, they're not just big guys. I mean, they like to punish people. They like to block. I mean, it's kind of like plays right into what Greg Studrawa and the new offensive line coach and Ed Warner's been preaching for a while here. I think they really helped themselves with this offensive line class, at least down the road. Immediately with Pridgeon, but with some of these young guys, I think you're going to see them step up. And then the other guy, we all know about Austin Mack, the kid from Fort Wayne, Bishop Lewis High School. But a guy I've really got my eye on is Benjamin Victor, 6'4", 6'5", lean guy that you watch video on him. He goes up and gets the ball. He loves to compete. He's a smart guy. He's in the Rivals 100, and I don't know. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I think they really helped themselves in the wide receiver spot, even only getting two of these guys.
Yeah, Austin Mack's a very complete guy. What they really like about Victor is that, like you said, he's 6'4". He's only like 170 or 180 pounds, but they love him like in the red zone. You can just throw the jump ball to him and go get it. He's very competitive. He's great hands. Kind of a little combination, of Devin Smith and Michael Thomas.
Let me interrupt. Of course, we always thought they were going to do that with Jeff Green, but it never seemed to happen, the last several years. But go ahead.
I think there's a difference between this guy's talent and what Jeff Green had. No offense to Jeff Green, but I think he's a guy who can find a role quickly. He could be a red zone guy where they throw the fade to in the end zone, that kind of thing.
And one last thing. Another guy to keep your eye on, because these coaches are high on him. He's a 3-star, but they stayed on him. Luke Fickle especially, is Malik Harrison from Walnut Ridge High School. Everybody wants to right now talk about how they found Darren Lee was a quarterback in high school, and he became one of the great outside linebackers in college football. And, of course, he declared for the draft this year. Malik Harrison, when I was talking to him yesterday, I asked him, what's in your heart? What do you want to play? He wants to play receiver, wide receiver. But as the coaches all pointed out to, he could 2 years from now, if you're putting his hand in the dirt as a defensive end, he could be an outside linebacker, he could be a tight end. Sky's the limit. But these are the kind of guys that really 2 years from now you're really watching that could really turn this class into a big one.
Yeah, and that's what they want. They want athletic guys with toughness and competitive spirit, and they figure we can find a position for these guys. Who knows how their bodies are going to develop? We just want that kind of that mindset. That's the prototype that we want. Those are the ingredients we want, and we can mold them into different things because they can. Their bodies change, but I think that they really like this class. The thing there wasn't a lot of drama yesterday, other than Pridgeon, which they weren't surprised about, and Harrison, which nobody was surprised about. There was no drama, but I think in a way that tells you how far this program has come under Meyer.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't a big scramble on signing day. They had their guys. They ended up in the top 5 in most of the national rankings. It does appear, and they did all of it before signing day. That's pretty remarkable. And the other thing, real quick, I mean, we talked about Keandre Jones, but it's funny when we were talking to Luke Fickle about Darren Lee and how far he came. Like we said, when he showed up here, when you were uncovering the you don't know where this guy was going to end up playing. You thought he might be some kind of receiver or something, and next thing you know, they're looking for they're now looking for Darren Lees out there, to recruit, because that's the kind of player they want, an edge player who can run and track people down and things like that. So who knows where Malik Harrison will end up one of these days. It'll be fun to watch. But, we'll be back, you and I both, for one of our regular podcasts before spring drill start in March. And, of course, there's a big pro day coming up here. Might be the most highly attended pro day in history. We'll see, because there's about 14,000 Ohio State Buckeyes that are eligible for the draft. That was an estimate, but it's going to be a fun next couple of months. But until then, we'll be back to talk about that. Until then, this is Tim May.
Bill Rabinowitz, thanks for watching.